I really felt I was stuck for doing this the rest of my life. At the end of the day, I just couldn't take this unhappiness anymore. Working hard in something you don't love is stress. And working hard in something you love is passion.
And that leap of faith, it always requires a leap of faith because we don't know what the outcome is going to be.
Culture will define a company's destiny, but character will define yours. There's an African proverb that says, smooth seas never made a skilled sailor.
Welcome to the Unlock Lab. I'm your host, Tosca DiMatteo, and today we have the absolute pleasure of talking to Mitch Patel, who is the CEO of Vision Hospitality Group. You know, in doing a little bit of digging on your journey and just to share a little bit with the audience, you grew up in California and moved at the age of 10 to Cleveland, if I'm correct. And you were in the hotel business at a very early age because your parents were in it. And then you went into studying civil engineering, got your master's degree, and really changed your career at about the age of 26 to go into what you were really passionate about. And I love these kinds of stories, right? Because you know, you made some really big pivotal decisions. You had, you know, a really different type of upbringing and exposure to different things. And what I surmised in your journey is your passion for people and your passion for transformation, like literally turning like a patch of dirt into a place of human connection. And so I just want to pause right there. There's so much in just that part of your journey, but and right now, right, just to anchor the audience, you run a company that owns and operates over 40 hotels. That number's probably outdated, in 9 states, and maybe you have 15 or 16 or so in the pipeline and about 1,500 employees. So just to ground the audience, like you run a big organization and to own and operate is rare, if I'm not mistaken, about my knowledge of the industry, which also I have the benefit through my husband, but that's big to say we're going to build hotels and then we're going to operate them like soup to nuts. Like, so tell me a little bit more about your story of how you got to run such a big, complex organization.
Well, it sure didn't happen overnight, Tosca. First of all, thank you for having me today. It was absolute pleasure meeting you a few months ago in Miami, you and Ryan, and I do remember the fascinating conversations that we had. It's amazing the conversations that you could have over a simple meal and some wine, right? And then we're continuing that conversation without the food and the wine today, but it's my pleasure to join you today. So a few things, Tosca, that if you don't mind, I'd like to share, because I did read a little bit about this podcast of yours and how you are really, your listeners are wanting to see how they could unlock their potential, right? And listening to people like us to get inspiration on how they could do that. And there, I think the majority of people are locked in whatever, role that they're in their lives. And so I think that it's great to have these conversations. So kudos to you for having these discussions with many people. So I want to start real quick, if you don't mind, Tosca. I want to go further back, if you don't mind, with my father.
Yeah. So
for hundreds of years in India, my family were farmers. And my great-great-grandfather, my grandfather, and the expectation for my father was to be a farmer as well. And so it's a small village, a dusty village in India. And, the day my father was born, the expectation was for him to be a farmer and take over the family farm. And it wasn't this huge farm, it's a small farm that many people had back in the day. And so he, his expectation, his younger brother's expectation was that. And there's a small elementary school, a very small elementary school in the village that just went to like 5 grades. And why? Because for farming, all you needed was to have some elementary reading, some elementary mathematics, and that's it. And there was a point when he was very young where he realized that there has to be more to life than just to be a farmer. And at this time, television had come out. Of course, we're decades and decades away from the internet. But television came out and it connected these young people to something beyond their little bubble in that village, in that farm. And he saw that, wow, that there's more to the world than just this. The Bollywood movies, that he would go watch, and then he saw that, and he was dreaming. It has to start with dreaming. Everything starts with dreaming, the thoughts and dreams. And he started dreaming about, wow, I think I could do more with my life than just be a farmer. And so he convinced my grandfather that there's a school. It's about 3 miles away that secondary school has middle school and high school, and he wanted to do that. Initially, my grandfather said, no, first of all, how are you going to get there? And why do you need to do that? I need help at the farm at this age now. And he did not give up. There's going to be a lot of morals, the story that I will probably share. He didn't give up. He was persistent, and my grandfather finally agreed. And so my father would go to school, walk 3 miles one way, and walk 3 miles back. And in India, there was a monsoon season, where it rains about every day. These roads were dirt roads. And he would take his shoes off. He only had one pair of shoes, but he would take these shoes off and he would walk barefooted to school. And there was no electricity. There's no running water at the house. So he would have to study with on kerosene lanterns, and they would run out. And think about that. I mean, it's like 7, 8 o'clock. It's dark, and he couldn't study because there was no light. And so these are the things that he had to overcome. And I'm so fortunate that I get to know that story, and I pass it along to even my kids, because I think it's so important, the sacrifices that were made for this generation, the next generation, which I'm going to get to. But finishing up this story, he became the #1 student in the class. He graduated #1. He was the first person in this little village to go on to college, and which was the wildest. High school, secondary, middle school, high school was a big dream. So think about college. So he went on to college, and now, of course, my grandfather's supporting him, and then he goes to college, and then at the end of the day, the point I want to make is because of his studies, he was able to come to the greatest country in the world, and that's the United States. So he came with $8 in his pocket, but something really, really powerful, and that's the American dream that none of us should take for granted. It's the greatest country with the greatest opportunities, and I know oftentimes you might not see that, and you might not believe in that, but I still believe in it, and so many people believe in it. And if he did not do that, then I don't know what I would have done, right? In the next generation and beyond. So I owe a lot to the sacrifices that were made by the generations that were before us. And what is the American dream, Tosca? The American dream is simply a better life for the next generation. Simple as that. And so that's what we all want, right? That's what we all want. My parents wanted a better life for myself, and my brother, and then I, hopefully, my wife and I want to provide a better life for my children and beyond. So I had to just mention that because he unlocked something, right? And himself, and that gave the ability to give me opportunities, and that I would have never had if I were if our family was still there. But we grew up poor. Let me make it very clear. Nothing was given to me, right? I was born in India, actually. My father came to this country when I was 6 months old. I don't know if people even know that story. And left my mother and I. I didn't talk to him. Phone calls were ridiculously expensive. He would write letters. I didn't know how to read. And I and my mother lived in that small farm with my grandparents, the same farm that he grew up in. And so, 4.5 years later, my mother and I joined in, and we could have joined earlier, but he just simply could not afford for us and to be with him. And so that was really the only reason. And so when we landed in San Francisco at the airport, my father came to pick us up, and I remember very little because I was only about 5 years of age, but they remind me of this story, that I didn't know who he was, and I'm supposed to call him Dad. And so I didn't know who he was. This person, my grandfather was my father figure, right? And so it took a while. It took a while to accept him as my father. And so all of this, why I tell these stories, because we all have challenges. We all have difficulties in life, right? We all have obstacles. But these obstacles and challenges can be overcome, right? Look at my dad's story, even my story, where, the expectation, okay, now it's like you said a little bit about this. My father studied here, and then he wound up leasing an 11-room motel in Stockton, California. And we're pursuing the traditional American dream, Tosca, right? Where my father is working at this pickle company, and they had a 2-bedroom townhouse, and he decides to pivot, completely pivot, where he leases an 11-room motel. Why? So my mother can run this small business. He could still continue to work at this pickle company, and we could have a place to live. So we moved into this little apartment behind the motel office, and we could pursue the American dream in a different way. And I remember as a 7-8-year-old kid, cleaning rooms, taking out trash, and even checking in guests. And so it was not easy, but at an early age, I don't think my parents ever sat me down and said, okay, you got to work hard in life and you got to do these things. I lived it, Tosca. I saw it every day. And that was all I knew. I didn't know that other people had different lives, that they would go on vacation, in summer and go on vacation in these breaks, This was our world. And, but fast forward, we moved from California to Cleveland, Tennessee. It was my 5th different public elementary school. And by the way, there's only like 5 grades back then, maybe, maybe 6 grades in total. So that means about every year we were moving. And so middle of my 5th grade school year, we moved cross country from California to a really small conservative town north of Chattanooga, Tennessee, where we live today. And he buys us a little larger motel. And again, I find myself cleaning rooms, doing laundry, taking out trash, and I remember, this is not something I want to do for the rest of my life, right? this is not something what I want to do. And I want it. So I, studied hard. And my parents, I've got to mention this too. My parents also did not want me to get in this business because the immigrant mentality, Tosca, was like, okay, we're going to work hard so you could have a better life. We're going to work hard in a small business so you could become a professional. Be a doctor, be a lawyer, be an engineer, be something bigger than running a small motel and or gas station or a sandwich shop, right? And that is the story of many immigrants. And go do something better than us. So that was drilled in my head, and education was the key to unlock that potential, right? Is you've got to study. You got to study hard. And I remember I had no life beyond, school and being at home. And it would be 9 o'clock at night, and I've done my homework. I got straight A's, and I want to probably, watch some TV. There's only that one TV, that back then in the living room with 3 channels. And my dad would say, "What are you doing? You need to study." And I'm like, "Dad, I'm done." He said, "There's always more that you could do. Go." And I'll tell you one great lesson that he taught me about studying. He said, "Go to the next chapter that they haven't even started reviewing yet with you." Because when you start preparing beyond, then what, it makes things easier. Now I'm in class, and I'm the only one in class that has gone through the chapter. So now as the teacher is teaching or the professor is teaching in college, I'm paying a little bit more attention. I actually have some questions, already maybe in advance, as opposed to seeing it for the first time. I said, "Wow, that's a pretty good lesson." And so, so I went on to college to be an engineer, Tosca, and got my bachelor's in civil engineering. Then the job market was horrible in 91, and my professors convinced me, I should say, to go and get my master's. And I wound up getting my master's degree in traffic transportation engineering. And after that, I went on to get a job in Atlanta as a traffic engineer. And I'm so sorry for the people that have lived in Atlanta, gone through Atlanta. The traffic is horrendous still there. And so, but here's what I tell people all the time, Tosca. I'm in my cubicle, and I'm supposed to design these roads from 2 lanes to 4 lanes in 25-foot increments. And I've always felt like I'm this creative person. I loved art, and I loved architecture, and I love creating. And in engineering, nothing against engineering. Engineering is a great discipline. But it wasn't for me. And I just did not have a passion for it. I would look at my watch, and I couldn't wait till noon, which is lunchtime. I couldn't wait till 5 o'clock because, hey, I get to go home. The time moves so slow, right, Tosca? When you're not having fun, and when you constantly look at your watch. And I had the Sunday night blues. I hated Sunday night because I knew what I had to do for Monday morning, get up early and fight the traffic that I'm supposed to fix, and go into my cubicle and do the same routine again. And I remember talking to my parents, and I would tell my dad and say, "Dad, I don't enjoy what I'm doing." And my dad would go, "You're being lazy. You just got to work hard at it, and hopefully one day, you're going to enjoy it. But bottom line is, this is your career. This is it. I felt I was stuck. I really felt I was stuck for doing this the rest of my life. And And I did it for another 3 years. And then I said, you know what? I just can't do this anymore. There has to be more to life than this. And so I took a chance. And I'm not going to tell you, you mentioned that I found my passion. I did, but not immediately. I honestly believe I chose to do something else because I did not want to do this anymore. And I didn't know if I'm going to love this. I didn't know enough about it to know if I'm going to love it, right? And so, but I took a chance. I saved up $3,000 working as an engineer. And I took that money, I moved it back in with my parents because I didn't have any money to get an apartment. And there was an opportunity to go build this hotel in my hometown and then to operate it. But I didn't have any experience. I didn't have any capital. And it's a very capital intensive business. I didn't have a network. I didn't have relationships. There's so many things I didn't have. As you mentioned, I was just 26 years old. And but I was determined. I was determined. That's what I did have. And so I built that first hotel as a general contractor, even though I never built a shed before. And I literally took off my hard hat, learned on how to put on a tie, and I became a general manager of this hotel, even though I never managed anyone at this point. And it wasn't easy. We did 10% occupancy, that first month, 15%, maybe the second month. And I'm like going, oh boy, did I make the right decision, Tosca? So the audience could probably understand this. On one side, it might be something you don't love, but you're getting a paycheck every 2 weeks. And then on this side, you took a big leap of faith, and you said, okay, there has to be something more here. But it's scary. It could be daunting, right? And it's like, okay, how do I feed myself? How can this be financially successful? And I started thinking about, okay, did I make the right decision? Should I go back to working as an engineer? And one day I just woke up and said, no, that's not a choice. We are going to make this work no matter what. I'm not going to let, my partners down. I'm not going to let my team down. I'm not going to let my parents down, who already has advised me, why are you doing this? It's not like my family had this business and I'm just walking right into it. No, this is something that I started with the advice that against what they're advising me. And so there was a lot of things that were, not going for me. But I said, we are going to make this work. And rolled up our sleeves and created a plan, rallied the troops. And we said, we are going to out hustle everyone in the marketplace. And we're going to figure this thing out. And as a leader, you have to have that clear vision, that confidence, that being optimistic, right? Because how are people going to follow you and feel that way if you don't yourself? And I'll be honest with you, I didn't know that for sure if I was going to do this, but by golly, I was going to give it my all. And I'm going to tell you, after 18 months of hard work, dedication, determination, we became the #1 hotel in the market. And I'll tell you something else happened, Tosca. I found my passion where I never expected to. And when you have a passion for something, you're going to work harder. You're going to overcome obstacles and will find success, right? Life is just too short. Be doing something you don't love. Right. And guess what? When you love something, you're going to work harder at it and you will find success. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. And I still have it today. You can probably hear it in my
Yeah.
voice. You know, my team knows it. Other people that I partner with know it. Um, and now, you know, it's not work. There's this great quote I love. It's Tony Hsieh, you know, the founder of Zappos, right? He knew nothing about e-retailing. He knew nothing about shoes, but he became the largest e-retailer of shoes in the country. How? Because he created a culture that was all about the people, right? And he wanted to create a culture where work wasn't work. So we're always talking about how to balance work and life. But if you create an environment where work is not work, there's nothing to balance, but just now you have life. And that is the way I feel like every single day. I'm just living life, you know, it's
Yeah.
not work.
Yeah.
And working hard, what does Simon Sinek say? Working hard in something you don't love is stress.
Right.
And working hard in something you love is passion. And so I say this all the time, the number one ingredient in entrepreneurial success is passion.
Well, Mitch, I have to say, thank you so much for walking us through the depth of the context of what you believe today and how you lead and your outlook on that. You know, and what you shared was just so rich. And you're such a great storyteller. That's like that's a whole nother topic. But I just want to pull out a few things for who's watching today. You know, that I heard a few ingredients on this path of pursuing your life, your biggest life. I heard exposure is an important ingredient, and that it takes work, right? We live in such a world of instant gratification today that I have to pull that out too and remind everyone, like, it takes work to go after something new, to try something you've never done before. I also heard in your story that dreaming is required, that having a sense of what lights you up or what you want, right? And also education is part of it, right? Because part of pursuing what we want is also learning about that which we want. And you didn't mention it, right? But in that story of, your origin story of clearly a huge theme of managing through change, right? Of managing, whether that's, walking to school every day and dealing with whatever weather patterns were coming, right? But like, how does that get managed? All the way to you changing schools, at least once a year when you were young, right? So I think all of these components, just as a reminder to folks that these are some really big themes. And so if people are stuck, they can ask themselves, do I actually need some exposure to what I might want? Do I need to actually give myself permission to stop and do some dreaming? And I think what I really love about you walking through the depth of your origin story is that, in the work that I do of kind of healing wounds and not applying Band-Aids, it's really about looking at the context of the patterns that we've built in our life. And by digging in and understanding that context, you can understand, why am I this way? Why do I think this way? Why do I do these things? And are they serving me or not? And one of the things I'm really curious about in your story is, I think a lot of people know they're miserable or not happy with where they are, and they continue until there's maybe a moment or a catalyst or something. So I'm curious if, you were in this pattern of doing something that wasn't bringing you joy. You knew it wasn't bringing you joy and weren't at that point where you were giving yourself permission to do it. Your dad, obviously a huge figure in your life, wasn't saying, go go be happy then, right? You weren't getting that directive. So do you remember, was it a series of events, or was it a moment when you were like, this is not the life I want to live? Like the catalyst for that change?
Yeah, Tosca. I mean, I don't know if there was a single moment. I was trying. I really thought that something will change. In my feelings of what I was doing, but it's not like I was 6 months. I did it. It's not even a year. It was like 3+ years, right? And I realized that now this is enough. I just don't think another year or 2 or 3 doing this it's going to change. And so I was stuck. And I really felt like that the only way to get out of this is just be bold and just do something that I felt for myself and everybody around me, it was dramatic. I mean, that's dramatic, right? To quit a job that you've been working at this company for this many years, but more importantly, this is what you studied. This is what you got your bachelor's and you got a master's in it. It's not. I mean, you're an engineer. You're a specialized traffic engineer, and so it was a big change. And it's at this time the business was still looked down upon in with my parents. Like business was to them a gas station, a motel, a sandwich shop, something, a newspaper stand. It's like something really small and something that you got to work hard and where you don't probably need a lot of education, right? And so it wasn't, so you had that going against me as well. But so there was a lot of factors, but I think what really drove me is just at the end of the day, I just couldn't take this unhappiness anymore. And then it's important to mention this. I was really exploring what else is out there. So the dreaming, right? It's like every spare moment I was dreaming about, okay, what else? What else could there be? And that's when, when you're dreaming like that and then you're researching, you're having conversations, then opportunities can open up. And that's when, my uncle, I was talking to him and he had an opportunity for me. And so that's when I said, okay, I'll take it. Let's go do this. And of course you've got to have support. I had my uncle and I didn't have any capital, but I had to put some few partners together and really make all of this work. And so, so I think to answer your question, there was a few things that happened, but I'm so thankful that I wouldn't be talking to you today. I wouldn't be telling that story. I wouldn't, what you mentioned, having, this many associates, I found not just my passion that we talk about, I found my purpose. I found my purpose, right? Purpose is powerful, Tosca. Purpose is powerful. It's like what gets you up in the morning, right? What really motivates you? Your life should have meaning, right? And I didn't feel all of that, right? And now, look, I could absolutely, when I get up, I feel like I have this incredible, meaning of life and purpose where I get to enhance so many people's lives, that are in our company, right? Where we have a housekeeper that has become a general manager and beyond, right? And how amazing is that, and the communities that we serve and the impact that we make on our communities, right? And all the work that we do there. So there's a great story that I love on purpose. It's, John F. Kennedy was visiting NASA, and he saw a man with a broom. And he asked this man, so what do you do here? And that man said, Mr. President, I'm helping put a man on the moon. That's powerful. And that's purpose. And so, what drives you? What motivates you? First of all, you have to ask that question internally to yourself. But then you should also, if you're a leader in an organization, you should ask that question, for your team. So there's a lot there, but I don't think it's 26 years of age that I knew all of this, Tosca. I could honestly tell you that I really thought that, okay, I'm gonna have this one hotel, and I'm a partner in it. I'm gonna operate it for the rest of my life. This is it. This is what I'm gonna do. And I didn't think about growth. I was never thinking about, okay, hotel 2, 3, 4. I think the challenge sometimes, there's nothing wrong with dreaming big. I think you should always dream big. Nothing big happens, by the way, thinking small, right? But at the same time, I think people get too caught up with winning the Super Bowl when they haven't even played the first game and scored the first touchdown and won that first game. You've got to also see what's right in front of you and make sure that you do a fantastic job of what's right there in front of you. So, for example, this gentleman at Marriott was telling me this story. He started off as a general manager 30 years plus ago in the company, and now he's like this huge executive at Marriott 30 years later. He asked Mr. Marriott, when he was a general manager, this question: give me some advice on how I could grow, right? And Mr. Marriott's advice was this: number one, just do a great job of what you're doing currently in the position that you're in. So I think too often people want to grow and people want to okay, I deserve to be here, I want to be here, but they aren't mastering or being great at the job that housekeeper that's a general manager. By the way, we just had our annual conference where we celebrated our awardees. She was our general manager of the year of all of our general managers. And we have some great GMs, so that's a huge accomplishment. And she would have got to where she was at if she didn't do a great job as a housekeeper. And then she had an opportunity to be an executive housekeeper. And then she wouldn't have had an opportunity to be in management as an assistant manager if she didn't do a great job as an executive housekeeper, right? And so onward and onward. And now she did a great job as a general manager. Then guess what? There's going to be other opportunities beyond that. And so the advice number 2 that Mr. Marriott gave to this gentleman was, do not assume that people are going to just promote you. You have to market yourself. And you have to really let people know, that, hey, here's me. I would love to have that opportunity. Don't make that assumption. And I said that you've got to do a great job in the role that you're in, but don't make that assumption that everybody knows that and everybody knows that you want to grow beyond that. So now you've done a great job. And number 2 is let people know that I want to do more. And I think sometimes people are afraid of that.
Oh, I completely
People
agree.
People are afraid to ask to do more. I think when people ask me that I want to do more, I am learning something real quick from that person. I'm learning desire and hustle and positive attitude, because we can't teach those things, right?
Right.
Those intangibles are so important. I want to surround myself with those people that want to do more, that have that positive attitude, that have that hustle, that fire in their belly, right? That want to grow. And as opposed to just, I want a promotion for the sake of a promotion. And so I think that advice that Mr. Marriott gave was good, because this person wound up becoming, he went from a general manager to being an executive in the company, which is the world's largest hotel company, by the way.
Right.
And so it's, that's some pretty powerful advice. And nothing, Tosca, I'm going to say, look, I don't think anyone deserves to be just given something. Okay. You got to earn it. I'm sorry. I mean, some people may not probably agree with what I'm saying, but these are businesses,
Well, and there's so much that,
and
yeah, there's so much. I mean, every time, everything that you're sharing, there's just so much within each point that you're making. So I just want to also pull out some of that and just really highlight it.
yes, please.
Like even going back to that decision where I was asking you for the clarification of how did you know? And what I heard was just the amount of dissonance you felt with yourself, right? Mounted to the point where you're and no. And I think that sometimes people think we're going to have this big lightning bolt. We're going to have all the answers before we make that decision. And that is 99% of the time, that is not the way it works. We figure it out as you go. And I think that just your transparency is just another testament to that you don't have to have all the answers, but when you trust yourself, when you know, I want more, I deserve better, I want my life to be different, and taking that leap of faith, it always requires a leap of faith, right? Because we don't know what the outcome is going to be. So I really wanted to pull that out to say, we don't always know, because this isn't, we have a lot of folks here that are in those second and third career moves, right? When it's the same patterning of well, what do I want? But then the risk is higher, right? At that stage, right? Because it's oh, but I have all these bills now, and I feel more, limited, right? And all of that is illusion. But then you come back to, talking about permission to have the dream, but also realizing you don't have to have it all figured out before you take those first steps. And I think the word purpose can be daunting for some people. And the way that I also kind of talk about purpose is that you can even find that your purpose doesn't have to be your vocation. Your purpose, in my opinion, is how you show up in the world. Who am I being as my purpose? Because you can do that anywhere. And I bring that up, Mitch, because you were look, you have to do well where you are and master that. And in a way, I think wherever you are, even if you feel you can't make a move right now, there's financial stuff, whatever the thing is, that you can always, the growth can always be with yourself and how you alchemize the opportunity that you are in. And look, I'm not trying to disregard, there's toxicity out there. There's, if you're treated poorly, that's a whole nother situation, right? But I'm just saying that, all things equal, that there's always growth with where we are, even that if that's becoming the next version of yourself, and that purpose, can then move into vocation. If that makes sense to you, if I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, look, there's a lot there. I know taking that leap of faith is not easy, and that might be the most difficult decision that probably anyone would ever have to make. And if you listen to so many people that have pivoted, they probably have shared that same sentiment. I know that your listeners are at all different age groups. For me, I can't speak too much for others. I can only speak for my own experiences, right, Tosca? I mean, I'm just someone that was an engineer that wound up finding my passion and growing this company. I can only speak from the experiences that I've had. And I did it, keep in mind, when I didn't have much to lose. I didn't have a family with, a spouse with kids and a home with a mortgage and all those things that I had later on in life. I think, look, no matter how old you are, I don't think you're ever too old to making a pivot or making a change in your life. I really believe in that. I'm sure we're going to talk about some things that where I want to pivot today at almost 30 years later of doing this. But that was a big change, and I did it I believe, at a time when it was a lot less to risk. Now, I do say this often. Let's say I was in the company for 10 years, 15 years. Now I've got kids, I've got a mortgage, right? The white picket fence, that American dream, right? And I don't know. I can't tell you that if I would have sacrificed and just risked all of this to take that plunge. And I just don't know the answer to that. But that's why I'm so happy that I did it when I did. And I'm so happy that I did pivot, right? Because I know there's no question in my mind that I would have been miserable even 10, 15, 20 years doing that, because that I've seen enough to know that I would have. Yeah. And there's something that we say in our company all the time, Tosca. We are all inherently different, with different strengths and different weaknesses, right? You have different strengths and weaknesses. I have different strengths and weaknesses. And so we say this often in our company: place the squirrel in the tree and the fish in the sea. I was that squirrel in the water, drowning and unhappy. And so I think it's really important to also find where your strengths are, what you could be really good at, and I'm right-handed. You could teach me all you want to throw a ball with my left hand, and at the end of the day, I'm going to be mediocre doing it and probably not happy doing it. And so play off your strengths and then find somebody else on the team that's left-handed.
Hey, I'm left-handed, just saying. Yes.
There you go. Yeah. Right? There you go. Yeah. So that's why we're a team today.
Yeah.
And so I think that people bring unique skill sets, and we're all different. And I think that's really important point too, is really, really dig deep and find out what you're really, really good at. And I know what I knew what I could be really good at. And I'm so glad that of course, then when you find that passion, you get even better and better at it. But yeah.
Yeah. And, Mitch, it's just so clear to me. It was clear the first, 5 minutes of me meeting you. You're such a people person. You're such a heart-centered leader. And you're running a huge business. And I am curious if you ever feel this tension at all between business, sound business decisions, sound financial decisions, and sound people-centered, people-first decisions. Like, is that ever in conflict for you? Or tell me how you look at those types of choices that I'm sure you have to make all the time.
Yeah, look, we do have to make tough decisions often times. And, we are a very absolutely, I want to start off by saying that I always say this, we are in a people business, and most businesses actually are. If you could be a banker, you could be something else, but you're always dealing with people, the internal team that you have, and the customers as well. So we're all in the people business, but especially hotels, right? Sometimes I think the people that just think that it's bricks and mortar and the real estate, they're not going to be as successful long term as the people that truly believe that this is a people first business, people serving people. So many years ago, when I first started the company, I realized that if we want to be successful, then absolutely let's surround ourselves with great people with great attitudes, and then take care of them, right? You got to take care of them. We all have this emotional register. We're born with it. And too often, Tosca, people want to make withdrawals without making deposits, right? So you have to really invest in your people if you want something out of your people. And our best leaders, Tosca, are the ones that truly have built mutual respect and admiration. That is how you lead. And when you have somebody that believes in somebody so much, and I've heard people say this, I'll go through a brick wall for somebody, right? And for that person. And when you know that you have people that'll do that, then you've got something amazing. And I don't want to get into too much of that right now. We could talk about leadership all day long. But these these decisions that you got to make aren't easy. But I will tell you, we will never sacrifice our values and beliefs. We won't. We know who we are, and we're going to surround ourselves with people that share those values and beliefs, and we are very disciplined with that. No matter what amount of money or what amount of return that we could get, we will not sacrifice that. We're running a marathon. We're in this business for the long term. By the way, life and business is a marathon, not a sprint. And there are people that are trying to run sprints all the time, and they're not going to win the race, right? And so being a good human being is so important. I always say this, especially to younger people and so forth, that culture will define a company's destiny, but character will define yours. And so I strongly believe in, if you're a good person, right, and follow the golden rule, which is a big part of our culture, just simply, I think every culture and every religion in the world understands that, right? And so I think that at the end of the day, good things are going to happen. And that's been our mantra for years. But yeah, look, there's a lot of data in our industry, right? Tons of data. And today with AI, right, we could capture that data better than ever. So yes, oftentimes we're torn with making those kind of decisions, but at the end of the day, we got to go with our heart. And we have to make sure that we're making sound decisions, being a people-centric organization. And I say this all the time. I rather have 20 hotels that are award-winning, where our teams are engaged, our teams are happy and motivated, than to have 150 mediocre hotels where our culture is average. That doesn't interest me. And so we will only grow with the confidence of making sure that our culture grows along with it, right? And so, and that is so important to us. And today, I don't care which business you're in, it's very competitive. It's very competitive, right? Every business is, every industry is. And so the margin for error is not great. And so those that are disciplined, in making sure that they have a engaged and motivated and happy people are going to win. I really believe that. And we live in this transparent world today, right? With social media, now with AI, you could find that burger joint, that has great employees and great burger, wherever it's at. compared to maybe a big name brand organization with incredible marketing, right? Because people will find that business, and so it's really really important that you have great people with great attitudes. They're well taken care of and engaged. That's where people fail. And then guess what? If you've got engaged people, happy people, you're going to have happy customers and loyal customers that are going to come back. And by the way, the data proves it. And our hotels have the highest associate engagement, has the highest guest satisfaction, and the hotels that have the highest guest satisfaction have a greater market share, greater profitability. And so it helps with the profitability. And then don't be greedy. Invest back in your people. And so that's how we do things in our company, and that's how we make decisions in our company.
First of all, amen. Like, I hope a lot of leaders get to listen to your philosophy on business, your values-based decision making, your people-first approach, and that the data is there to support that putting people first works, that it does lead to the results. And of course, being in such a short-term minded capitalist society, sometimes the long term doesn't get the focus that it needs to. And I'm curious, because you are very passionate about this, about how you lead, about how you make decisions, that how does that impact when you are, engaging others? Maybe it's vendors, maybe it's your banks, what have you, that maybe don't understand where you're coming from, don't understand how you're making decisions. Like, how do you approach that, right? Because usurping, the way people think about leadership or they think about running businesses is a tall task and, hard to do alone. So what do you do when you encounter differences in how you want to make decisions based on your values approach versus other vendors or other partners?
Yeah, look, Tosca, I mean, we, been doing this for a long time now. We built an incredible reputation, very proud of that. And just, it's so important. It's what our parents would always say, right? Do not ruin our name. That was drilled in my head at a very young age. And so, it was important. It was really important for when I started this company, and then as I was scaling the company, that we would always continue and maintain and making sure that we don't tarnish, and grow, actually, if anything, our reputation. So we've been very fortunate that many, if it's lenders or even other hotel partnership groups have approached us over the years to want to partner with us because, they'll call Marriott, they'll call Hilton, they'll call others and say, who should we talk to? And because of that reputation, they'll often point to us. But that doesn't mean we just accept it. We really, really spend some time and making sure that we're asking the questions and making sure that our values are aligned. And so, your question is, a very good one. If vendors, if banks, if joint venture partners, any of these type of partners, not just your employees, not just your team, if they don't share the same values and beliefs that we have, then we probably will not, we will not do business with them. Life's too short to be doing business with people that you don't want to do business with. And it's just, I've here, fortunately, we have not had those horror stories. But I can't tell you how many times I've heard horror stories of of these kind of partnerships that did not go well. And so I think it's really, really important, even in your personal relationships that you might have, right? That you are aligned with those core values, right? If those core values aren't there, then even the relationship at home is not going to work, right? And so it's really important that that those are aligned, and we spend a lot of time making sure that alignment is there, and then look, Tosca, nothing is going to be. I don't want to sugarcoat this. In any type of partnership, it's not going to be perfect. You're going to have challenges at home, in business, right? With employees, with a vendor, there's going to be challenges. But when you have those challenges, when you have strong partnership with respect, mutual respect and understanding, and share those same values and beliefs, then you will overcome those. And we have. We've been through some really bad storms, right? This is a very cyclical business, real estate and hotel business, right? And 2008 and 9, 2020, I can't tell you, all the challenges that we've had. This has not all been like, okay, perfect, in the last 30 years. But I will tell you this outlook on life and business being a marathon, and making sure that we get the right partners that share those values and beliefs, we have absolutely overcome all those challenges, and it's been really, really amazing. Your business model, whatever it is, should not just be built on nothing but good times. Ask the question, what does your business model look like when a storm comes? What does it look like? Can you weather that storm? So there's something that we also say in our company all the time, that these storms are going to come, they're going to go away, okay? That's a fact, okay? There is no clear skies for the next 30 years. That is not how the patterns have occurred in the last 30, 40 years, right? So do you want a brick house or do you want a straw house, Tosca? I think there's a lot of companies that have a straw house. And so when that storm comes, gone. And so we want a brick house. I talk about it all the time in my company, in our company. We say, we're going to have the best brick house in the industry. And what makes a brick house? A brick house, every company, every industry is going to have a different brick house, okay? For us, it's the brands we partner with. We're going to partner with the best brands in the industry, in the markets that we're in, right? Our basis, our debt, our balance sheet, all those things. I'm not going to get too technical, but that makes a good brick house. But the most important pillar is culture. And you see that time and time again, right? Look at Starbucks, right? When things get tough, look at Chick-fil-A. Look at the companies that have the best culture. When you have an incredible foundation, right, of a great culture, when that storm comes, you're going to actually be able to grow market share, as opposed to, because people want to go to people they trust and they have confidence in, and not someone that they don't. And so you could actually separate yourself even further when that storm comes. So yes. We have done that time and time again. And so that's what we prepare ourselves, even though we do not wish a storm to come, of course, but we know that we want to be as prepared as we can. And so we could go look for opportunities, actually, than to be fixing our house, right? And that's what we have done in the past storm cycles.
Ooh, I love that for many reasons. And I just want to just say about that right here. I'm always talking about strong foundations, right? Your business foundations, your culture foundations, but also your foundations as you. Like, are you taking care of you as a leader to be able to weather the storms and to be able to have that even mindset of looking for opportunities in the storms versus getting washed up in it. So I just want to say I'm so aligned with that way of thinking. And also I want to go back to what you were saying, which I think is so important to just highlight, this idea of discernment, of if you are aligning with the wrong folks on the personal front, on the professional front, right? Like that's always going to create more challenges down the road. But if you take the time, which is hard sometimes, right? To be patient and say, oh, I need this thing, but actually that's not a fit. That's not a fit. That patience, can be so challenging. And so, and I know like we're coming close to time, and I just so value the time that you've spent here, because you have a whole lot of other choices you can make about what you do with your time. And I do want to touch on something you talk about, and something I know I've heard you talk about in other interviews around balance, and around you honoring the life that you want to live, which obviously is beyond also the business that you run. I often use the word integration, but that's just me. But as you are entering whatever era you're in your career, in your life, what are the questions you ask yourself around, are you in the kind of balance or kind of integration that you want? How do you, because you may want it all, right? And in the and it's like that can be really, that's a tall task. So how do you look at that in your life?
Yeah, look, that's a great question, Tosca, that I think a lot about today than probably I wasn't as much, right? 20, 25, 30 years ago. A few things that I'll mention, passion. We talked about passion, right? That's the number one ingredient in entrepreneur success, but there is one downside. It can consume you. And you can't allow it to consume you, right? At the expense of people that you love. And you see that all the time with entrepreneurs, right? They are so, they're so driven. They're so passionate about, like Steve Jobs, but wanted to create this incredible technological breakthrough, right? And put this incredible tool in people's hands, that it consumed him. It consumed him where you're not balancing, which you're talking about, the people in your life to that your own health. And so I think it's really, really important, that there is a better balance. When I started this company, I didn't have the money, didn't have the network, didn't have the experience. But there was one thing that I had endless amount of, and that was time, right? You're 27 years old. I was like, okay, I've got tons of time. But now fast forward, right? Nearly 30 years later, I'm very fortunate that we have built, all those things that I didn't have. But now I'm looking at time more than ever. Every decision that I make now, I'm looking at the lens of time. Time has become the most precious currency and commodity now, right? And so what do you want to do with your time? And balancing that, right? And I think that a lot of people don't take care of themselves, Tosca, right? Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally. It's like, what do they say when you're flying on a commercial plane, and they say put the mask on, yourself. So many people want to make sure they take care of everybody else in their lives. It could be at home and it could be at work, but they don't take care of themselves. And I see that all the time. And I was one of those people, and I think that that's not good physically and mentally. It's not good. And then of course balancing the time with your family. And I'll be frank with you, I don't think my wife would probably agree with this early on that I was doing that. I was so obsessed, with what I was doing that I look back and I did not, put the time that I should have. And it's not just time, Tosca. You could be there with somebody, but you're not present, right? Your mind, especially today, right, with the technology that we have, physically, you could be somewhere and you could be at your daughter's soccer game or their recital or with your wife at dinner. But if you aren't there emotionally, mentally, then you might as well not be there physically, right? Actually, it might be worse. You might not, you may not, you're better off not even being there physically, right? And so I think it's really important. You use the word integration. So I am being all of this has to be more purposeful. How do you want to approach life? How do you want to approach with your time? And so, I finished, I think this, it was an honor of a lifetime. Here's this kid, 26, that got into this opportunity, that's a kid, they got into this business, worked really, really hard and now fast forward, we've done amazing things at the company. Now I want to be able to give back, right? To give back to so many. And so I've just finished my chairmanship role at the American Hotel Lodging Association, 34,000 hotels. And to be in that role is just incredible. In my wildest imaginations, right, as that person that started this business, would think that I would have this opportunity. And so that was great opportunity, but it was very consuming. You have a family, you have this responsibility, you have this company, and so this year, it was very purposeful for me, that I want to do some things that I've not done in the past. And I want to spend more time with my elderly parents, who are, we don't know how many years, right, that I'm going to have that opportunity to do that. So I took them and my wife's parents, my other set of parents, on a tiger reserve.
Wow.
In India. And we stayed at some amazing hotels. That's something I love doing. As you and I've talked about this, right? Because I'm in the business too, and I love, when someone extends this incredible hospitality and makes you feel like you're the only people staying there. Hospitality should be how you make somebody feel, right? Less about the amenities. And so I took them to these incredible these hotels that only had a certain amount of rooms and villas. And my mom, at dinner, she was telling us the story of how she would walk, and they didn't have much, and she would go get milk or something, and she would just dream, Tosca, about one day that I'm going to be able to buy this dress. One day I'm going to be able to eat at this restaurant. One day maybe I'll be able to stay at this hotel. And fast forward, she's sitting with me at dinner at one of the greatest hotels in the world. And she has a tear in her eye. And you could tell that she's so proud that the American dream has come full circle, and she gets to do these things that she's only dreamt about doing with her family. And so to me, there was nothing, right, more special than those moments, and for them to be able to experience these incredible experiences, with us. And so there are so many other things that I want to do with my time. You know, my dad, when he came to this country, he only knew cricket, and there was nothing else. That football and basketball, those sports were difficult. There was no cricket. You couldn't watch cricket. There's only 3 channels with the rabbit ears.
Right.
And he, so the tennis, he gravitated. He never played, but he gravitated watching it. Right in the '70s, you had McEnroe, Connors, all these characters, right? And I remember watching tennis with him. And he would say, "Sit down, let's watch, that's after I finished all my studies." But
Of course.
it'd be a Saturday or Sunday, and he goes, let's watch the Wimbledon finals or US Open finals. Fast forward, my son played tennis at the number one tennis team in the country, the high school that he was playing at. So we're doing the Grand Slam, we already did U.S. Open. We're going to go to the Wimbledon with grandfather, father, and son,
wow.
right?
Wow.
3 generations, and this is priceless, right? Priceless, and you can't put any amount of monetary amount on these things, So these are things that I'm purposefully doing. That's just some examples. What are some of the other things that I want to do? I love painting. I didn't mention that. That's why engineering wasn't for me. I couldn't take the road this way and this way. I couldn't paint those white lines purple and green. And so I was always fascinated by drawings and paintings, and I won. I would win these art competitions, and I had art in museums in high school, middle school, but that wasn't a career. The immigrant mentality was, no way are you going to become an artist, right? You aren't going to become an artist. So I want to go back and do those things that I haven't done in a while. But I do get to paint in a different way. You brought it up on your introduction. I get to take a blank piece of canvas. It could be a dirt, and we get to create amazing art that people get to experience from all over the world, right? And so to me, that is so fulfilling, right? And so that's why, passion, we talk about passion, it's so many different ways. It's the people, it's the hospitality, it's the creative piece of it. What gets you really motivated and driven, and all that I get to do, right? And so now with your family, that I didn't probably do as much of it decades ago, I'm getting to do these amazing things with them. And so, so look, there's a lot there that we could talk about, but balance is very important. If you don't take care of yourself, Tosca, then it just, nothing else is going to really work really well, right? And so I think you got to take care of yourself. I know that sounds selfish, but I think it's being unselfish, in my opinion, because if you don't take care of yourself, then how can you take care of the people that you love the most, right? So I think it's really important to do that. And some of the things that I love doing the most, sometimes, Tosca, people ask me this all the time. So, Mitch, what do you do? What do you do on weekends? And what do you do? I like to do nothing, and I like to do nothing. Sometimes the best days are nothing, because our world is we're doing so much every single day. We're balancing so many things, right, in the roles that we have, that sometimes, just having some peace of mind and just taking a little walk and having some clarity and fresh air and gets you to think, and just think about what are some of the other things. I have not stopped dreaming. So my dad was a dreamer, and clearly you got to start off dreaming, and I still dream. I still have some dreams that I would love. Everything starts with a thought and a dream, right? Nothing ever in the world has that's ever happened where someone hasn't, started with a dream, So the challenge is the dreams have to now become reality. Otherwise, it's a daydream, right? And dreams also have to have a plan. Otherwise, it's a nightmare, right? And so you have to have a dream, and then you have to have a plan, and then you have to take action, right? And that's how dreams become reality. Otherwise, it could be a daydream or a nightmare, which you don't want either of them. And so, that's a little bit about that subject.
Oh my gosh, so many gems. I know I'm going to listen to this myself a few times. So much wisdom that you shared, Mitch. Thank you so much. And I just want to invite, who's watching right now, who's listening right now, what is the action that you want to take from this conversation? Because at the end of the day, taking that action is what will change everything. And thank you for taking the action, for being here, Mitch. I can't say it enough. Like you contain multitudes. Like that's something that, when I was prepping for this, I was like, Mitch is just so dynamic, as we all are. But the variety of your skills, of your interests, of just how you show up in the world is just, you're such a bright light. And I'm just so honored that you came here today to share your wisdom and your experience. You're hard fought, clearly, that you are where you are because of your history, because of your work ethic, because of your values, and you just taught us so much about some of the keys to life. And so I hope you keep on doing podcasts. I'm like, Mitch, I think you should start your own podcast, but that's that's
I don't know
just
about that.
but
Leave it to professionals like you, Oscar.
but again, thank you so much. And is there any last comments you have, or just want to let you have the floor last here?
Yeah. Look, Tosca, first of all, I just want to thank you for having me today on your show. It's an honor. I'm really, thrilled that we had this opportunity to have this discussion. I'll just, I know there's a lot to unpack probably from what I said. And, these are just, I could only speak for my own experiences. And so I'll just sum it up to number one, just find your passion. Life's too short to be doing something you don't love. And I think it's so important, whatever it is. And it may not, if it's not in business, if it's something else, we have this one life, right? And I want to be able, one day to be able to say that I gave it my all and I have no regrets, right? And I think that we struggle with that, all of us as human beings, right? And I think you just got to do it. Number two, I think you got to think big and be bold. It's uncomfortable, thinking big and being bold. But if you don't, then as we talked about, none of those other things are going to happen. And then I think the final thing that I just want to mention is be a good human being. And I really believe, if you're a good person, and you know what, we say that's a given, but I think you could look around in the world and say that is not a given. Even in business, I see that all the time. And those people are running sprints, and you could tell that 2 years later, 3 years later, they're not around anymore. And those companies are gone. And so I think that, like I said before, culture will define a company's destiny, character will define yours. And I really believe good things happen to good people, and people want to be surrounded by those type of people, right? And so look, there's 100 other things that we could talk about, I'm sure, Tosca. For the sake of time, I know that we talked quite a bit, but wishing all the listeners all the very, very best. It's never too late to go, go live your dreams and take action. And I think that there's no reason why you can't today. With the technological advancements that we've had, and that it might be a great opportunity, to go do those things. And so wish everyone all the very, very best. And I really believe, I know there's a lot of uncertainty out there. We didn't touch on that. As you know, with the geopolitical challenges and just so many other things that are the headwinds that are out there. But I will end with this. This is the greatest country in the world with the greatest opportunities. And I believe in the human spirit, and I believe in the American spirit. And we, have been through storms. All of us have. But I'm going to end with this quote. There's an African proverb that says, "Smooth seas never made a skilled sailor." And so we are stronger, more resilient, smarter, when we go through those storms. And clear skies are coming, and I believe in that wholeheartedly. And so just be prepared for that, and go live your dreams.
Oh, thank you so much, Mitch.